Our Planning and Zoning Commission meeting to order. Roll call. It looks like Commissioner Frederick and Commissioner Bush are both absent. We do have a quorum. Order of business. Any additions or corrections to the order of business as presented?
Mr. Chairman, no, there isn't.
Okay. With that, we'll entertain a motion to approve the order of business as presented.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Motion second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Minutes from the July 17th commission meeting have been included in your packet. Anybody have any questions, comments? Not, I'll entertain a motion to approve as presented.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second. Motion second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Okay. The pen over there. All right, first item of business, our regular schedule, is the Renaissance Zone. Mr. Josephson, you going to begin that?
Yes, good morning, Commissioners. Steve Josephson. You have a request before you for a 5-year real estate Renaissance tax exemption. It's at 31 Sims Street. The applicants are here today, and this is a public hearing.
Very good. So the Renaissance Zone is 003-19 to consider a request for Renaissance Zone project located at 31 Sims Street. And we have Mr. and Mrs. Teagan available? Snyder.
It's the Snyders who are the actual applicants.
Okay.
The Tegans currently own the property, and the Snyders are the applicants. And
Okay.
what's going to happen is, if everything's approved, they will be purchasing the property and then renovating it.
Okay, with that, we'll have the applicant come forward, state your name, please, and give us a little history of your project, what you're looking to do.
Good morning. My name is Daniel Snyder, and this is my wife, Karen Snyder. As stated before, we are looking at purchasing 31 Sims Street. And doing so, we are planning to renovate and convert it into an Italian bistro and bakery. In those renovations, we are updating the building to current code, which includes fire sprinkler systems. Part of the renovation will be putting in a very costly hood system and vent, and public restrooms will be installed, male and female restrooms. We'll also be doing the front of the building. As much as we appreciate the style which is currently there now, we would definitely like to update that to a little bit more of a style that would suit our business. In our package, we submitted the look that we're going to be achieving, which would be more of a old school Italian deli style front. As far as additional renovations, we're doing floors. We are going to be installing modern lighting versus the lights that are in there now, drywall work, bar, and full commercial kitchen. So with this Italian restaurant, our vision is we would love to have in-house dining. We would also like to have a little bar area for coffee, drinks, desserts, part of which is my wife's specialty is cheesecakes and all that yummy bacon stuff. Also, we also would like to offer the community delivery, especially in the downtown area, door-to-door type service for the lunch times. And also during dining out or dinner hours, we would like home deliveries too. So we were trying to cover the wide spectrum. Also, catering.
Catering for events.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we'll have
we'll do open mic nights and different things like that. So the whole feel for the restaurant is the Italian home. You know, there it is fine dining, but at casual dining prices. From the look on the outside to when you walk in is just that Italian vintage home. It'll very much encompass the feel of an old downtown.
Bistro.
Yeah.
So with that said, that kind of covers the feel for what we want to do as far as renovations, what we're planning to do on the inside. Cost-wise, we'll definitely be exceeding that 50% mark by a pretty decent margin. Do you guys have any questions?
Are there any questions from any commissioners on the project as it's been presented? Very good. It looks like we meet the spending threshold. This is our third project of the year, the Renaissance project of the year. Do we need the estimated tax impact to be presented? No? Okay. 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 Any other questions from any commissioners? All right, Mr. Josephson, do you have any?
Public hearing.
Okay. Okay, with that, we'll open it up. Thank you. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
With that, we'll open it up to the public for any comments, for or against. Any comments from the public? Any comments from the public? If not, Mr. Josephson.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. Steve Josephson. Just wanted to go over, staff recommends approval based on the following findings. This is consistent with the goal in the city's Renaissance Zone plan, which is to gain at least 3 improved structures or new businesses in the zone a year. And this is the third one to come before the city. It's also consistent with the state's requirements that to be an eligible rehabilitation project, the commercial property investor must invest at least 50% of the full and true value of the property. The property's valued about, I believe, about $194,000. The cost of the improvement is approximately $130,000. So it exceeds that 50% threshold, and it's also consistent with objectives in the city's comprehensive plan. Staff recommends approval and for the full 5 years, and I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Josephson. Any questions on the project from any commissioners? All right, if not, we're looking for a motion to approve or deny the project as presented.
I move the City of Dickinson Planning and Zoning Commission recommend approval of the Daniel Schneider petition for Renaissance Zone tax exemption as being compliant with the City of Dickinson's Renaissance Zone plan as amended effective July 1st, 2019 with the City of Dickinson comprehensive plan, as well as being in the interest of public health, safety, and welfare.
I'll second the
A motion
motion.
by Mr. Franchuk, second by Ms. Dukart. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thank you. All right. Item number 2 on our agenda is the final plat 006-19 to consider a preliminary final plat for the Humphreys subdivision located in the southwest quarter, Section 28, Township 140, North Range 96 West. And Director Hadley, I believe you're going to introduce this?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This site is located, for the most part, directly east of the Public Safety Center along State Avenue. It's a minor plat creating 2 lots. One of them is 10 acres plus in size, and the other is 1.5 acres. The intent of the owner who owns this entire area is to create a place for their one of their children to build a home. So, you know, I think there's been obviously through State Avenue, there was a lot of changes in that area. There's some floodplain issues you can see on your map. This plat just basically allows the applicant to legitimize the number of accessory buildings, at least it appears it will, with the size of lot, and then also create a place for one of their children to build a home. It does include in the conditions of approval, most of them are pretty straightforward, but for a plat this small, we don't typically have a development agreement, but we do have a development agreement for this particular addition. I think Administrator Gauze been working on that with the applicant as well. So, you know, with that, maybe turning it over to the applicant. Staff doesn't really have a problem with the proposal and would recommend that it be approved, but it would be contingent on also having a development agreement go to the City Commission.
Okay, thank you. Is the applicant here to speak on behalf of the project? Please state your name and what your intent is.
Bob Perosa of Interstate Engineering.
Dean Kubis, I'm the property owner.
Well, like Mr. Hadley was saying earlier, this started out with Dean wanting to provide a parcel for his daughter to build a home south and west of his current home, and it first started out with that further south unplatted parcel, and then Leonard called and we had some coverage issues with the structures, and then we incorporated the rest of it into the second lot. And in the process of the review, we added a drainage easement along the west side to encompass that floodplain area. This development agreement I have not seen, so I don't know what that includes.
Well, this is, the development agreement really, quite frankly, has nothing to do with the plat. We have an existing right-of-way agreement when that street and sidewalk were constructed, so it'll be an amendment to that. It's very simple. We're working through it now, and I don't see that there's going to be any issues with it. So having that being a contingency is not an issue.
Okay. So in summary, what this plat does, it takes care of, like Walter was saying, some zoning issues, some building issues, provides a place for Dean's daughter to build a house. I think Walter would concur that what Dean is proposing with her daughter be similar to what there is there right now. So I mean, this is it'll be nice.
Yeah.
Very good. Any questions by the commissioners for the applicants? Doesn't look like it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That will open it up to the public for comments for or against the project. Any comments from the public?
Mr. Chairman, if I could, I know this was a late addition, and it's just something I think, you know, the engineering department would like to be on record. We had asked, and then this was after the review period and the comment period, to extend an easement for access, water and sewer, and it would divide Block 1, Lot 2. But if you see on the bottom of the plat to the west, there's a right-of-way created for 25th Street West. That's just north of the Public Safety Center. What we were looking at for a connectivity from the Public Safety Center to the Country Oaks Estates property further to the east, an easement going across Mr. Kubis's property, I think would be beneficial to the city. I know the applicant there's been some conversation with my staff and with his surveyor, and it sounds like that's not an agreeable solution to the property owner. I just wanted to make the commission aware of that intent, that I think there's some good planning benefit to having that extend across the property. Whether or not that street might be built in the future, I couldn't say right now. You know, this would be specifically a planning tool to dedicate some future right-of-way with no immediate intent to build a street either by the city or by the subdivider. But
Mr. Kubus. Any questions for Mr. Kubus?
Mr. Kubus, did you say that was not acceptable to the property owner? Did I misunderstand you?
I'll let him speak for himself, but, you know, through some email correspondence, it sounded like no.
And Bob Prosi of Interstate Engineering, when visiting with Dean, a couple of reasons why Dean felt that would be unacceptable at this time. Number one, the neighbor, Art Sickler next door, there is no plans currently or in the crystal ball to do any development on Art's property, which this street would bisect that lot 2, and as Craig mentioned, there is no plans there right now. So right now, Dean would feel it would be very unfair towards Dean to put the onus on him to provide a street for something that isn't anticipated, asked for, or needed at this time. And if, in my opinion, as working for engineering company and developing and planner, if someone's developing, let's say, Art's land to the east, it should be that developer that approaches Dean and says, hey, I would like to have a street through here. Can we make a deal? Otherwise, essentially what Dean is doing is giving property and putting a shadow on this plat and property for something that may never happen. So that's what I believe Dean's position would be.
No, I don't. What would I do with my other property? You put a road through there, what would I do with the other side of it? You know?
Well, that would be completely up to you. It'd be roughly a 5 acre, if I'm looking at it right, 4 or 5 acre parcel of ground. I think that's what we do on most plats is ask for right-of-way dedications. So it's not unusual. On the other side, like they said, east of here is Art Sickler's property, which understand there's no plan for development. And then east of that is Country Oaks Estates, second subdivision, I believe it is. And there's a right-of-way platted out 24th Street that is platted out to the east side of Art Sickler's property. And so, you know, these are the things I think that the Planning Commission needs to look at as, you know, it's not for today. It's not necessarily for Mr. Kubus. It's not for Art Sickler. It's for Dickinson. And just wanted to bring it to your attention that it's something that, you know, for the future, things that we should look at. And none of these things are ever set in stone. We have right-of-ways that get platted, and plans change, and right-of-ways and easements get vacated all the time. We probably vacate as many easements as we dedicate, you know, here in the last year or so. So it's a planning tool, I guess, in my opinion. And if it were dedicated as an easement, it wouldn't take away any acreage from Mr. Kubus, where if it were a matter of you know, being able to issue a building permit, it would just be an easement if that were the choice of the Planning Commission. I certainly don't want to put any more restrictions or encumbrances on the property. I just, you know, am looking to help this board do planning. I think that's an important part of what we do. So.
Well, another problem I have with this, you guys want to talk to me about an easement. Our water problem to this day has not been fixed. I got 3, 4, or 5 acres that is ruined, is slew because of that development back there. And nobody has addressed it. We had an agreement with the city, signed it last fall. They have to make it equal or less. Not a damn thing has been done. And you want something from me.
That's up to this commission to ask for it or not.
But I'm just telling you how I feel.
I think
that should have been taken care of a long time ago.
The improvements to the pond that Mr. Kubus is referring to, I believe, were made this spring, so, and have nothing to do with this plat, I don't believe.
No, I understand
I think the plat is fine. It was just a comment from my department that an easement across there might make some sense in the future.
And I guess with that, if Dean, I believe it would be your request that the plat be approved as it is, with no proposed easement between that former lot line. With that, if development happens to the east, I'm sure you would visit with the
I'd visit
developer
with them,
and
definitely,
consider
but-
that, but at this time, I think it would be a bit premature to anticipate a street through there.
Okay, Mr. Clerk?
Well, Mr. Kubis, we had called in the past from Mr. Kubis,
Mhm.
regarding drainage issues. I remember receiving many phone calls from those commissioners. So would this help it? You know, I
No,
think-
they made it bigger, and all the water drains 100% straight through. They need to hold water back there like it was before,
And
and they are not doing it. I mean, I've got land that's ruined, that's not right.
when Commissioner Dukart, we also added a 100-foot wide proposed drainage easement along there to, at the request of the city, to basically quantify that swampy area that's being caused by the drainage, by the development further north. So, I mean, Dean did give the easement to provide for that swampy area.
And we appreciate that. That was something that should have been done before Mr. Kubis owned the property. And then really it would have been the city's issue to clean up on this drainage easement. That's only now being platted. That had nothing to do with Mr. Kubis. That was when it was originally platted. The drainage easement should have been in place, and then it really would have been a city issue to go in and clean it up. But without that easement there, we had no right to go do that. So, you know, I don't want to muddy the waters with the plat. I agree with Walter's recommendation. The plat is fine. It, you know, it serves the intent of building the extra structure, which is all it's intended to do now. Just looking out, and the road would have nothing to do with the drainage easement as it is today or will be tomorrow. Just something for the commission to consider.
Would the road even work with over the drainage? Can you run a road over the drainage ditch?
Well, it's the same drainage that we built State Avenue over, so yeah, there would be a large culvert that would have to go under the road. So,
And now you wouldn't need that.
as it sits now, no, the water would
This drain.
flow like it flows. Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, any other questions for Mr. Kubis or for the applicant? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. With that, we didn't hear anything from the public. Anything else from any commissioners? Morning. Good morning. All right. Hearing nothing. After consideration, is there entertain a motion from the commissioners to approve or deny the proposal as presented?
I move the City of Dickinson Planning and Zoning Commission recommend approval of FLP 006-19 Humphrey Subdivision Final Plat as depicted in Attachment A, and meeting all the requirements of the Dickinson Municipal Code and also being in the interest of the public health, safety, and welfare.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. That is, the motion is to approve as presented. Okay. Any other discussion? Any other discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thank you. Our next item of business is a special use permit, 003-19. Consider special use permit for the construction of a second Davis Buttes water tower within the City of Dickinson, ETZ, off 34th Street Southwest in Stark County. And Planning Director Hadley, are you introducing this one as well?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is to add a second potable water reservoir for the Southwest Water, and then the State Water Commission is funding this, directly adjacent to the current one up on Radar Base Hill. Give you the location. Pretty straightforward, obviously. I think the applicant can explain the benefits of having the additional reservoir up there for all of us, and not only rural water, but also city water supply. Haven't received any comments from any property owners or neighbors on this, and staff would recommend approval. I guess I'll wait till the applicant speaks and we can discuss the conditions of approval, which are all pretty straightforward. There's 12 of them, but they're not monumental. They're kind of fashioned after our conditions that we do for cell towers, honestly, just to not impact the neighborhood.
Very good. Thank you. We have the applicant here to speak on behalf of the project. State your name and give us some of the details, please.
Chairman Bullinger and Commissioners, I'm Roger Coling. I'm here with representing the State Water Commission. And as Walter said, there is an existing 1 million gallon tank up on the Davis Buttes. I've always referred to it as Radar Base Hill, but growing up. But anyway, so this second tank has always kind of been in the future plans. This tank basically is going to build more capacity in the system for North Dickinson, actually all the way to Killdeer. It'll also build capacity, additional capacity from all the way to Belfield, and then east to Richardson. So it's necessary. It's going to be a very good benefit to the city. North of Dickinson, there's a lot of interest in future development, and some of that is being held back because there just isn't enough water to serve those needs. So this will hopefully take care of a lot of those issues. The tank will be similar to the one that's up there. It'll either be welded steel or glass bolted. We usually bid both and then see how the bids come in. It'll be the same size. It'll be another 1 million gallon potable water reservoir. And we've got the ground, when the ground was purchased for the first tank, there was enough purchased for this. We need a temporary easement to the west, just for storage of materials. We've got that. We got that from Les and Marlene Frenzel, so that's all taken care of. Access up there, we've got access easements to get to the tank, so there should be no issues with adjacent landowners on that.
One of the conditions was a separate 911 address. Is this a different 911 address than the first?
Well, I wasn't clear, in pulling it up in our system, I wasn't clear that the existing tank had one in our system.
Okay.
So it's just a...
Okay, it's one of the conditions then.
Yeah,
Fine.
it's just to make sure that there is a 911 address. Obviously, it doesn't have to go to that tank, but to the site.
Sure.
Okay.
That's the intent. I'm just trying to make sure. Sometimes we pull up that stuff, and if it doesn't come up with a 911 address, then it kind of sends off a light that says maybe we should ask for one.
So if it has been established?
Then they wouldn't need to do anything.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that something we should do on our end, make that
Yes.
request, or does that just happen and?
Actually, you should make that request, and I can either email you the contact for that person. It would be part of your building permit process.
Oh,
You
okay.
wouldn't come through the city for the building permit, so it goes through Stark County, so we would need to coordinate that, but I could, and Stephen could help you as well, because he's at the county, so,
Great.
okay?
You bet. That'd be fine.
And all the other conditions you've reviewed and are acceptable?
Yep, everything gets sent to, the state health department, and we've talked to Stark County, we've talked to emergency management. Yeah, everything seems to be in order.
Okay. Any questions from the commissioners?
I have one.
From Nicole?
Have you addressed the access to it, because there's a restricted roads going into there, the access to the equipment?
Yeah, like I say, we've got access easements off of the paved road. I guess I'll have to.
But I'm talking about the roadway to get in there, it's restricted, there's a pavement and there's for access. You have to come in through the north and then going up that road up there, that's been addressed, or?
Like I said, we've talked to Stark County. They don't have any issues with any of the roads. Generally, what we do is in our specs, if the contractor damages the roads in any way, they are responsible to fix them back to the way they were, and then we'll go to the agency that's responsible for the road and get their approval for that everything is up to the way they want it.
Yeah, that was my concern, because that road is in real good shape going up there.
Yeah, you're right, it isn't. It's looks like it's an older paved road, and we're gonna have ready-mix, there's gonna be some ready-mix trucks, because it's gonna have a ring wall and a slab, so there'll be some, there'll be ready-mix trucks. There'll be some trucks hauling some material off. I think we're gonna have about 50, 60 yards of excess material we figure we'll have to take off the site. So I don't think those will be real heavy loads, but again, if there's any damage done to the road, we don't expect it, but if there is, it's in our specs that the contractor fixes the road.
Okay,
Does that address your issue?
yes.
All right, any other questions for Mr. Coley?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Skubis?
nothing to do with the special use permit. I think that this looks fine from engineering standpoint. Doesn't look like on the plans. I'm just wondering if there's any future plans for an additional feeder main that would come from the plant, potentially through town up to the Davis Buttes tanks, that we might need to be planning for.
I don't believe there is nothing on the drawing board. If that's something that would come up at a later date, I guess our engineers would meet with the city or whoever and look at what their requirements are. For now, it's basically just connecting on to the existing main transmission line that's up there and feeding water through that existing line.
And that's what it looked like, so thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kubis. Is there anything else for Mr. Coley? Doesn't look like it. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, all of you.
Move into the public hearing section, and we'll allow the opportunity for the public to speak for or against the project. Please state your name and...
Good morning, Brian Wool. Our family owns the Radar Base Hill. We own 34th Street Southwest, which they will be using to access the tower. Our greatest concern is road damages. We are solely responsible for maintaining that road. We do all snow removal, we do all asphalt repairs. There was tens of thousands of dollars stuck into road repairs this year. And we are concerned with the amount of traffic and heavy trucks that it's gonna break it up. When the previous tower was built, there was no repairs made by Southwest Water. That was left to us to take care of. They also do not maintain their approach accessing their property or maintain the gates or fence lines. Last year, there was an active crime scene on their property, and it was because their fences are not maintained and gates are not kept locked. So we do have some valid concerns about those issues.
Okay. Okay. I guess two issues. One is would be the road conditions, the
Yes.
damage to the roads, and then the fencing.
The fencing and their security. So we have other entities that use our road to access their towers, such as Stark County and Emergency Management, North Dakota DOT. About 10 years ago, we got together with all these entities that had easements and asked them to contribute to a road fund, $500 a year, to help with snow removal, road maintenance. The exact conversation with Mary Massett at that time was, we do not pay anybody to use any property. So we have been maintaining Southwest Water's approach, cleaning the gravel off of our road when it washes out, cleaning the snow off so there's access, and we are very concerned with 60,000 pound load limits north and south of us, no load limit on our road that they're gonna access through the section line to the east, which is 34th, extending out to Highway 22, and not follow any load restrictions and ruin our road.
Okay. Anything else you want to?
I would just like to know what they're gonna do about road repair when you guys get there.
Okay. Any questions from the commissioners? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Collins, do you want to address any?
I guess at this time, I don't know what kind of damage will be done, other than all I can say is, as I said before, if there is damage done to the road, those need to be repaired. And that's part of the contractor's responsibility. And generally on these projects, when they're done, and if there is road damage and it's repaired, we go to the entity that is responsible for maintenance of the road and get their final approval. If they don't approve it, then we continue to fix it to their satisfaction. Usually we're dealing with counties. Most of our stuff is out in the rural. So in this case, if it's a privately owned road, we would deal with the private owner and repair it. I don't know what else we can do. I suppose we could maybe try and use lighter loads, maybe restrict our ready mix trucks, reduce the quantity of yardage, just for a lighter load. I suppose we could maybe do something like that, but.
And just so I'm clear, the primary concern here would be with the construction versus the ongoing, okay.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, you have some of that on most construction projects. You have wear and tear on the roads, and they need to be repaired and fixed.
There's no other way to access this from the north,
I don't think so. I think it's just,
right?
there's just one way up and
One way in,
one way in and one way out, yeah. Yep.
Commissioner Dukart?
Oh, go ahead.
One concern he had was, this will be your second tank there for Southwest Water.
Yes, ma'am.
What he was asking for $500 a year for road repairs like everything else too. If we put that in as a condition,
Is someone else actually paying that? I thought Brian stated, Mr. Wool stated that they said no.
Well, right now, we get from Consolidated Telephone for 3 towers, which are not on our property. Stark County provides services greater than $500 per year if we call and ask for help. The state of North Dakota provides help. The ham radio operators have provided help in the past. I'm drawing a blank yet, but Kohler Communications and Fox Television cross our land to get to their towers. They provide the $500 a year road payment, and it just helps to offset the $200 per ton asphalt that we have to pay for to maintain the paved road. The snow removal, we have a full mile of road that we remove all the snow in the winter and maintain access. We keep the ditches mowed, we keep the shoulders bladed. So we have great expense that goes into road repair. And I guess one of my requests maybe would be, if they are gonna move forward, that the engineering firm and project manager meet with myself so we can go over the current road condition and make sure it's in as good or better condition when we're done.
I think that's a good idea.
Would that be acceptable?
Yes, I think so. I think that's a good idea. Yep. I just want to add, as far as some kind of an agreement, on, to help pay for some of these expenses, I think that's something that would have to be, that would be with the Southwest Water Authority. They do the O&M. The Water Commission, we design them, we build them, and the state owns it. But once it's completed and we're ready to open the valve, it's turned over to the Water Authority here in Dickinson.
Okay.
So. Okay. Well, and one other thing I was going to add, Mr. Wall, he mentioned fences. Yes, the fences up there are very old and run down, and we're going to be putting up new fences. That's going to be part of this contract, which it'll be like along the paved road and then also all around our parcel. So that'll be an improvement.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Colling. Any other questions? Would it be appropriate to add a 13th condition requiring a meeting between, would it be with Southwest Water or the State Water Commission and engineering?
I think it'd be appropriate. You probably want to have rural water in that meeting as well, just so they're aware of what's going on with the fence and all the other maintenance.
If I may add, I think that meeting would be good to have. We would probably have the Water Commission and Southwest Water meet with you folks and get everybody involved.
Sure.
My understanding is that the Southwest Water Commission, like yourself, would make the decision, not Mary Massey.
I think we would have to look at what you got, what your requirements are, but again, generally O&M, that goes to the Water Authority. They take it from there.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else from the public to speak on this project? All right. Hearing no further comments from the public, close the public hearing and ask for any other comments or questions, concerns by the commissioners. Anything else?
we need to add that to the motion, that the road will be repaired. What's satisfactory, Mr. Wall?
And they also have to have a meeting.
If we added a 13th condition that the engineering department, Southwest Water, the State Water Commission would meet and discuss the condition of the road prior, with the agreement that the road would be in the same or better condition after the project? Does that work? That condition?
I think we should add a fourth fee too also. I think it's fair that everybody pays the same, all the utilities pay the same $500 a year to repair the road.
I agree too.
I think that would be more between Mr. Wool and entities, because it didn't sound like they were all paying 500. Some were paying when needed, and
Some were
sure
paying with
that's somewhere
services.
We can get our hands in that, but we want to interfere with that.
I agree it should happen, but I do agree that that's probably between the owner of the road, which is the Wool family, and whichever utilities or entities are using it.
Say why?
Yep.
I guess I wouldn't like people tearing up my road and all that stuff.
Mr. Chairman, I think it's tough for this board to determine the intensity of the use for what, State Water is putting this in, but then Rural Water is going to be using it. How many times do they use that? All of that. I think maybe a better way to do it would be in that same condition. You could say that the Planning Commission encourages State Water and Rural, State Water Commission and Rural Water to participate in road maintenance, rather than setting a number. And that way, honestly, what could happen is, if it's part of that condition and it winds up being a huge issue, the landowner could come to the commission and say, could we review this special use permit? And then we could rediscuss some of these items. Because they are reviewed on an annual basis, and I mean, something like this, if there's not any major issues that happen every year, or you don't hear anything, then you really just look at it and it just automatically is reviewed and seems to be working. If there was an issue 2 years from now or 3 years from now and the road is falling apart and no one's helping, then that would be an opportunity that this board could hear the landowner, and you wouldn't really set a fee amount, because I agree, I don't know that we're really in that place to do that, but we could at least be the venue for that to work itself out.
And that'll happen annually.
Okay, strike that 500. And then what about weight restriction? Like using the normal weight restriction?
Well, I think that, it ties to county roads, and so then the county roads have weight restrictions. I think that then automatically it's going to be whatever the county road weight restrictions are, whether that road is capable of handling it or not, are probably going to be what the weight restrictions are on that road, I'm assuming. Dean, you can jump in. I think
that's restricted coming in from the south. They probably more likely have access in. There's probably a discussion made with the road superintendent, Al Heiser, that there's discussion to access to that, because that's my concern about, because that's all restricted all the way through there. The pavement, all the pavement through there, north and south to that access.
Yeah. So, once again, it is a road access that we're looking at for a water reservoir, really. We're not really looking at it for the access. We are. I mean, obviously, it is an access for everybody else that's there, but
Right.
we're looking at one piece of it. And, when someone else might build a house or do something else up there, and they're going to have the same load issues and the same potential damage.
Okay. Mr. Colling?
Yeah, I'd like to add, once construction is done and this thing gets put into use, generally, there's not really a lot of traffic that goes in and out of these tank sites. They have to go up there and check them once in a while and make sure everything is good, but usually it's a pickup for the most part. But I know, if you're talking snow removal, you gotta do snow removal for a pickup too. But as far as damaging, future damages to the road, I don't see where there would be much damage, from just normal pickup travel, there's, so it's not that there's going to be a lot of wear and tear after it's built, so.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm not sure if I'm reading into something here, but on the conditions number 4, it says the developer shall be responsible for all maintenance associated with the reservoir site and the private roads accessing the tower.
His roads. The intent of that condition is the on-site roads to have access to the tanks. That's the intent of that condition, was for that, but you can.
Doesn't extend beyond the property.
Correct.
Right, thank you. Anything else? Any other comments by the commissioners? Of course, yep.
The biggest concern with where Southwest Water's approach connects to 34th, they have a gravel approach and it washes out regularly. And yes, it's just pickups, but they access at least once a month. And where that washout is, they don't maintain, and they spin one on the edge of the asphalt and tear asphalt chunks out. And if you come look at where their approach is, that is out a fourth of the way into the lane already, where we've had to rebuild and repatch because they continually do not maintain that approach. So maybe they need to pave that approach going into this site to keep that from breaking up our road. Or use better gravel and maintain it regularly. So, an example, you asked about the services. Stark County and Emergency Management built a new tower within the last 5 years. Part of that agreement, they were not gonna abide by the road use agreement. They did not have an easement. We actually had to go as far as stopping construction to get them to agree. If you visit with Alheiser, they do help. This year, I think it was about $10,000 they helped with on road rebuilding. So it isn't that it's $500 every year. It averages out when they come to help. So Commissioner Dukart, you did have a very valid point. I understand you guys cannot set a dollar amount, but I do appreciate the fact that you want to encourage that meeting for them to come and sit down with us and work something out. That is huge. Thank you.
Thank you. Right. Anything else on this project from the commissioners?
I just wanted to add too, and that probably when they're hauling their equipment into this construction, they're probably gonna have to make sure their loads are, if they can reduce the weight some, because they're probably not gonna get permitting in there that they come in with too heavy loads from down the road.
Commissioner Bullinger and Commissioner Franchuk, yes, we would certainly follow the load restrictions, whatever those are. And again, I think that's a conversation maybe we will have now. There is concern with the road, and maybe we have to look at to see if we can do something maybe with lighter loads going in and out of there. Again, it's going to be mainly, there'll be some concrete work. As far as hauling the material in there, those generally aren't, on these tanks, aren't that heavy of loads. So we're aware that there is concern, and that we'll have to discuss that. And I think if everybody's aware of it, hopefully there'll be some attention, towards taking care of that road as much as possible.
Okay. Appreciate it. Anything else? Okay. If not, we've heard the proposal, seen the presentation. Any entertain a motion to approve or deny the request with the conditions as presented.
I move the City of Dickinson Planning and Zoning Commission recommend approval for the application SUP 003-19 for a special use permit for a second reservoir on the Davis Butte site, subject to the conditions listed above, plus an additional 13th condition we discussed as meeting all the requirements of the Dickinson Municipal Code and also being in the best interest of the public health, safety, and welfare.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. Motion by Mr. Karski, second by Ms. Dukart. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Fourth item on the agenda is the final plat and rezone 005-19 and REZ-003-19 to consider the preliminary final plat for West Ridge 3rd, which is a replat of West Ridge 2nd and a zone change application for a portion of the proposed replat from community commercial and R3 to R2 residential. Director Hadley, you want to introduce this?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Sorry, Mr. Chairman. Mr. President was last night, so it all runs together. So, thank you, sir. Yes, the preliminary final plat for 23 lots. The site is generally located west of Tractor Supply, up in West Ridge. Everybody's familiar with that area. I believe there's a zone change that staff would recommend approval moving forward. The zone changes take a little more time to go through the process. They actually have 2 readings at the City Commission. So staff has tried to facilitate this project through not only site planning internally for the internal departments, but also just to expedite our process. And as you're aware, the last number of years we've expedited our process. From when this initial development went through, it took 6 or 8 months to go through the process. You know, if we have this finalized, it could go through in a month and a half to 2.5 months, depending on when information comes in. That's just background information that we've had discussions on getting final plans for this proposal in for quite some time. I believe it was in May and late April even. We had some initial conversations. The proposal, in a nutshell, for the plat has some engineering and design standard flaws that our engineering department does not support. And so that is why you do have a recommendation from staff that that portion of it either be tabled, denied, whatever the board feels is appropriate, and until those items are resolved. There's some, Mr. Kuvis can go into the details a lot better than I can, but I just think that at this point we're excited to move the project forward. We would like to see it move forward, but we do need to stand by what we require everyone else to do in the community and have them meet our standards or have specific variances built in for what their proposal is. And this proposal, the way it is right now, doesn't have that. And so with that, you might want to get an update from the applicant themselves. You know, if there is any changes from the time that this was written a week ago to now, if there's any proposals from their standpoint. I know Engineer Kubis has some comments on the design, and Administrator Gah has some comments as well. This will have to, it's a 23 lot proposal, mostly all residential in nature. There will be an amended development agreement that also comes forward with this before it goes through to the City Commission, that will kind of collect all of the issues that we have, whether it be road improvements, infrastructure, access. All of those things will be put into that development agreement and then amended and accepted by the City Commission. So with that, I guess, nutshell, the REZ 003-19 zone change, staff would recommend approval on that. and FLP 006-19. At this point, staff would recommend denial or
Okay.
table.
Thank you, Mr. Hadley. Is the applicant here to speak on behalf of this project? Please step forward, state your name.
Good morning, Chairman Bullinger and members of the Planning Commission. My name is Larry Nygaard from Roars Development. I have with me Jeremy Easom, who also works for Roars. Jeremy is a civil engineer, and he's going to address some of the specific items that the engineering department had brought up. I want to just fill in some of the color as to why we're looking for this change and what we're hoping to accomplish by it. Some of you worked with Roars back in the go-go years of the oil boom, and what seemed like an insatiable demand for commercial property back at that time. And as we all know, things have slowed down, things have changed, and so we're reacting to that change with this request today. Just a little bit of information, there's about 4.3 million square feet of commercial land currently platted in and serviced in the Westridge development. We've been selling land at the rate of about 61,000 square feet a year. So it gives us, when we look in our crystal ball, about 71 years of available commercial inventory with what's there. And that is one of the reasons why we're looking at changing some of this very remote commercial property into single family, we hope. With regard to single family, you might all know that we do have some single family development land out in the western edge of Westridge. And again, that was platted in probably 13 or 14 for what were then the typical requirements for home builders. We platted a series of lots that had certain sizes and dimensions that were popular then. Things have changed since then. And so what you're seeing before you today is a revision or a different product, a lot size that's closer to the 7,000 square feet, which is the city's minimum, rather than the 10,000 square foot lots we used to plat. And this is all in an effort to create affordable lots for starter families. So what you're looking at today is not a plat that can be found in another area of town. These are lots we think are unique to Dickinson and not currently available. They're also hopefully going to be priced in a way that they can accommodate a more entry-level home. And working across the Bakken, no matter which community we work in, it's the entry-level home that gets left behind in these situations, and so everybody's struggling to try to find the right combination for that, and that's what we're hoping to do here. That's a little background about what brought us to this point and what we're hoping to accomplish at the end of the day. So affordable housing is a key thing that we're hoping for. With regard to the zoning, I appreciate the recommendation that the zoning move forward. We're happy about that. We do have some technical issues, I'd call them, that have been brought up from the engineering department. We have not been able to see the staff recommendations from the engineering department yet, so we're not exactly sure what those concerns are. Our hope today would be to get that information out in the open so we can discuss them. We hope that there are some alternatives or things that we can consider that might make this achievable, because we do have the demand for these lots, and we're anxious to try to fill it if we can. So any questions to me about what I've said so far?
Thank you, Mr. Nygaard. Any questions?
I have a question for you.
Mr. Gart.
Sure.
Why 7,000 square feet? Those are so small.
Well, here's what we're seeing across the state, is the width of the lots have narrowed down from what would have typically been 75 to 85 feet. We're seeing lots in many communities down to 50-foot frontage. That takes a unique home style. I mean, you can't just typically open a plan book and find lots of homes in that home style, but it's a common thing, and It is an effort to reduce the overall cost of the lots and reduce the overall price of the homes. These lots, I think, are slightly larger than that. I think they're in the neighborhood of 54, right in that area. And then the depth is in the 120 to 130 feet. So that is a very viable market, and there's a lot of interest in homes at that price point.
Any other questions for Mr. Nygaard?
Mr. Nygaard, is there a potential selling price on those homes? Is there a ballpark, or has somebody worked on that to see
Yes.
what is that number?
The target is
Figure out-
325,000. So I guess maybe for our benefit, to better understand what it is the engineering department is objecting to, I guess that's what I'd like to get out, because at this point, we're still in the dark on what some of the concerns are. So that would be very helpful to us.
Thank you. Mr. Kubas, you want to speak on this?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. The engineering department had made comments, and this was on August 1st. Apologize if it hadn't got in the packet. So the list, and I think there are solutions to these. And I'll just read for them so they're on the record for everyone to hear, folks tuning in. But this was maybe more of a, what I'd call a site planning or a construction issue, not necessarily a plating issue, but there had been some discussion between my staff and Roars about the extension of Westridge Drive to meet up with the, I guess, the next available right-of-way. Westridge Drive, as I understand it, ends just past TSC or right in that area. I think what we were asking for is that this would extend to the next right-of-way. I don't see the street name on here, but so it extends all the way through through Westridge First to this plat, Westridge Third. So there's no gap in there, and we're not looking for someone to build a section of street.
Mr. Kubas, if I can interrupt for 1 second.
Yep.
Do we have what you're looking at?
I'm just looking at the plat.
Okay.
I don't have a drawing that references
Okay.
that. This is just a comment, and I believe the comments were sent out via email. Apologize if those didn't get to the planning commission either.
I think they did. They did
This
get-
one? Gotcha.
Yeah, it was dated August 1st.
Okay. Sorry, just continue.
So there's some question about who's going to extend Westridge Drive to meet up with this property. The second comment was on the one cul-de-sac that's platted. It doesn't meet our minimum standards, and that minimum standard is for length, is 250 feet. This cul-de-sac length is 200. Again, something I think we can work through. The other comment on the cul-de-sac was on pedestrian connectivity, and sometimes that's difficult to do. We need to see what's to the east of Westridge Third. The minimum radius, we like to make sure, we show a 55-foot radius to the property line, and what our code requires is a 96-foot drivable diameter. So depending on what really the developer proposes for boulevards and such between the curb and the sidewalk, that really sets our 96-foot diameter. So, well, it looks like we would meet, we'd have a 110-foot diameter. That's property line to property line. We want to keep the trucks within the curbs. The next comment was a portion of this area requiring a lift station for sanitary sewers that is not installed. I haven't seen those, the engineering plans with water and sewer, but a comment was made by the folks who did review this. It looks like a lift station would be needed. I just wanted to make sure that that's the intent. Sounds like it's not the intent, so.
Okay.
The next comment is on stormwater that's now being rerouted from the south portion of this property, and the proposed to the proposed outlet in the first addition pond to the northeast. Again, this changes how the overall Westridge first was master planned. I haven't had a chance to review the stormwater proposal, but the folks who've reviewed it aren't sure that this works for future development. The next comment, and this is off of our engineering checklist that we require for plats like this, that we hadn't seen the geotechnical report for the land that's within our right-of-way. So that's probably a matter of just doing a little field work, or maybe the field work's been done already. Another comment from our engineering checklist was that the Postal Service pickup and delivery location have not been supplied. Minor issue, but sometimes when the first house goes up and there's no mailboxes, it gets to be a big issue with the first person living on the block. So those were the comments from engineering. I think we had a couple other minor ones about an emergency siren location shall be identified, especially with the remote location of this. It's on the very far edge of town. Typically, we require something to be proposed for an emergency siren location. And I don't know if Fire PD has a comment on that. Maybe we're covered there for a radius from the existing siren. I think we have a siren on the north water tank, Mark, does that sound right? Yeah.
There is a new one that was put up on 21st and 30th that may answer that question. I guess that we need to look at that.
We need a certain radius around that? Okay. And then the last comment was on the final stormwater report, which I think subsequent to this comment, we had received that now, and so that review is probably in process right now.
Okay. Anything else, Mr. Kubas?
I guess on the cul-de-sac, just a question, our code says cul-de-sacs should be limited to, where they're needed due to topography, a railroad track, something like that, a water course that just shouldn't be crossed. And wondering the cul-de-sac that's going to the east and then ends in a cul-de-sac, is there a reason why that cul-de-sac couldn't continue extending east and tying into another street?
Okay. So before you proceed, I'd just like to summarize. I've got 8 items you'd like to address. First is the extension of Westridge Drive, and who's responsible for that. Second is the minimum length and the radius of the cul-de-sac. Third is the lift station requirements. Fourth is the stormwater requirements. Fifth, the geotechnical report has not been received. Postal service pickup and delivery not provided. The emergency siren issue. And then the final stormwater report has been received but is in the process of review.
Correct.
Did I miss anything?
Nope.
Okay.
Hi.
State your name and I guess go through these as you wish.
Sure. I'll start off, Mr. Chairman. I'm Jeremy Easom with Roars Development. And as Walter started, we started this process back in May, and we had some good discussions. We have had many discussions, and to say we didn't know of these issues is not exactly right. We just didn't have the published list.
Okay.
So I guess what I'd like to do is just go through them one by one and tell you our history, what we're doing, why we're doing it, and then we can work some of these things out.
Okay.
So Westridge Drive, again, did you say you had a drawing to reference now?
We do.
Or no? Okay. All right. So with what we're doing, and this actually would address many of the things that were on this list, but as a whole, the parcel just to the west of Menards, that's a platted parcel. It's a commercial parcel, and all of everything that would be, if you extend the line west from the north end of Tractor Supply, everything in that line that was previously commercial would have needed a lift station to function, to get the sewer back to where it needs to go. So what we've done with this, and what our goal was with this, is said, let's try to redevelop everything north of Westridge Drive and utilize existing infrastructure. And so there's infrastructure in place on 12th Street and beyond to handle all the sewer, handle all the stormwater, and the flow traffic. And so by changing the zoning, which has now been recommended approval, from commercial to residential, we do not have the need to drain those commercial lots to a lift station. We're actually directing all the stormwater and all of the sewer to the north to existing infrastructure. Okay? And so this speaks to the lift station. It also speaks to Westridge Drive. By doing what we're doing, if you look at the overall circulation plan for traffic and for the use as a residential use rather than commercial, Westridge Drive doesn't serve a purpose past Menards. It'll be the backs of homes. And as such, we have platted, if you'll see on the plat, there's a non-access easement off of Westridge Drive. So this would be similar to if you drove down State Avenue and looked west to the State subdivision where you see the wall and you see the backs of the houses. That's what Westridge Drive would look like. And there's not the access there. So it goes back to what Larry said, we're trying to get these affordable lots, and for Westridge Drive to be extended, and all our access coming from the north through the residential streets, it just adds to the cost that would basically push these lots to a price point that's not where we're going for. So that's why we did what we did and why we platted it. Now, we did know that staff has been recommending Westridge Drive extended, and that's why we said, we just would like to get to this step so we could get some feedback. We could explain why I don't think we're going to get to an agreement with staff on that without some help. Speaking to the cul-de-sac, and the comments, the discussions I've had have been with Ms. Marshink, Loretta, as Craig wasn't available. But so the cul-de-sac, just picture this, I guess. It's hard if you would drive to the back side of Tractor Supply, and you'd look and you'd see the apartments to the north, and you'd see the big grade difference. This cul-de-sac would just aim right to that huge grade difference. And right now, what's platted, what's not part of this proposal is the apartments. There's an additional lot to the west of the existing apartments for another apartment. And that's not part of this proposal. It's already platted. And so to say we could put that road through, there isn't any public streets platted within that between Tractor Supply and those apartments to connect to. And so what we tried to do with that is, again, line the streets up with 47th. That was our west boundary. And then we had the back of the property line to work with. And to add, and I had the standard as 230. Mr. Kubas mentioned 250, but in fact, I brought the standard and it's 230. So we're 30 feet short. And that length is from the center line of the road to the center of the cul-de-sac. And so to extend 30 additional feet, you can see that if you go to look at your plat, that lot it renders the area at the end of the cul-de-sac useless. It just wouldn't work that way. And typically, and I've been, and I would think Mr. Kubas has done many, seen a lot of different municipalities, but typically we're more concerned with length of cul-de-sac being for too long, not too short. I'm not exactly sure what the worry is with this 30 feet, and I would ask, but I have proposed to Ms. Marshink, I said, can we get by with the 200? And then as far as the bulb, the actual circle, we meet the requirements for, it's a 110-foot diameter, we meet that. There's a 96-foot paved width, and we do show that on our on our plans, and nobody has really said that, they said that it doesn't meet, but I don't know that we don't meet. It just says we want a 96-foot drivable path. We provide that within the 110 that's platted. What we've asked for is, can we put the sidewalks right next to the curb through the cul-de-sac only. And that way, we can still get a sidewalk, we can get the connectivity with sidewalks. So we believe we've provided a reasonable request. And to hear, I think the comments that were written, or were read just now were older comments. And so I'm not sure if there's been additional discussion. It hasn't been, we haven't had it. So we think that the cul-de-sac could be, I think we can get there. And I think Mr. Kubas even said, I think we can get there, but that's for discussion, I guess, that we'd like to hear your input. As far as the stormwater, they said that there was some concerns with the stormwater. Again, if we break this in half, previously the stormwater was modeled to go to the south. So they use the cul-de-sac as your line. Everything to the south would have gone south, everything to the north would have gone north. But keep in mind, we had planned all of these north lots to be multifamily apartments. So they would have been very dense as far as parking and roof runoff. And when you get to the single family, you end up with more open space with the grass, more grass, less roof, less parking, those types of things. So what we've done, and we've provided the storm report, says that the additional runoff from taking the whole area to the north works. And to date, we have not, and Mr. Gruber said he hasn't read it or reviewed it, but I believe once that's done, that one will go away as well. And it was provided before, I mean, it was on the deadline, so it's been in for a good length of time. There's, you know, as far as, it's not like it just came in and they didn't get a chance to review it. It has been in. Remind me if there's some other ones I'm missing. What's the other? The geotech. Quite frankly, the geotech, again, if you look at the engineering checklist, it's very long, very in-depth, and the geotech, it takes some money. Basically, it's a deal where you're going to go poke holes, and with the issues that we've just talked about, the Westridge Drive, you know, if it goes down in flames, we didn't want to spend that money. And what Ms. Marshing told me is, she's like, you go do it the way you're proposing, but if we can't come to agreement on these roads and you have to build Westridge Drive or plan through streets, you're going to have to do it again because you didn't do enough. So basically, it's something we can work out. We definitely, we're not opposed to doing it. We just didn't spend that money before we could get in front of the board and have this discussion. Any more?
I'm not sure the emergency siren is something you can.
Yeah, that one was one we just need to work. Yeah. We did get comments. We did the agency reviews, sent those emails out. We received agency reviews from E911, and their only concern was the addressing or the street names. And I think we can work through those issues. If there's more, as far as a siren location, we're not opposed to do anything in that. Okay. And the mailbox, postmaster, it's kind of the same thing on that. Again, if you've worked with that agency, and I think the city has worked with them on some things, they're a little difficult, and we just would like to know that we have a reason and we can start putting, it's an easy one to work out when we know that we have a final plan. So I think we can get there on that one, and we're not opposed to doing the work. It's just we haven't had that done yet. So.
Okay. Ms. Dukart? Commissioner
I
Dukart?
would like to have Chief Seabuck, I'm reading his report. I mean, we're all about the rezoning, don't get me wrong there,
Okay.
but cul-de-sac.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
And your question?
Well, I'm reading your report here. The fire department will have an issue with the dead end created in phase 1. Is that taken care of now?
I believe there's been conversation between Mr. Eastman and Fire Marshal Selly concerning the fire code requirements for a turnaround on a dead-end road. Am I correct? That's correct. Yeah. I believe that issue is being addressed, if not in fact resolved. Correct. And Fire Marshal Selly is back. Thank you, Jeremy, for your comment. As Fire Marshal Sully is coming up, there is one thing I'd like to add to this under future planning, as City Engineer Kubis has stated previously in some of the things this morning. Currently, we're dealing with residential development that probably won't exceed 30 units. But if and when future plans exist for that to exceed 30 units, by the fire code, 2 fire department apparatus access roads will need to be available. 2 ways into that residential development from different directions, as remote as possible, need to exist. So when they're talking about and when they're looking at their future planning of the roads and the necessity of roads and whether they're going to connect or not, if there's a future plan to extend that development, house number 31 isn't going to get built or permitted until that 2 ways in, 2 ways out is to exist. So that needs to be part of that thought process at the very least. On the Hanner, the road.
Well, on the dead end, it's that south portion. You can kind of see that anything that exceeds 150 feet has to have a hammerhead, turnaround, something for our fire trucks to turn around. We kind of discussed a couple different options. One is providing a temporary turnaround. One is actually not developing those homes until the road completes on the phase 2, I believe, what we've seen at one point. So we've kind of walked through that portion of it. We'll just have to make sure that things don't happen until we either can get a truck turnaround or we have the continuation of the street.
I can share with you, Mr. Stone, I live on a cul-de-sac, and we just got done with an overlay project that was very scary because there's no access. When they shut Park Street off, we had to park at the Queen of Peace Church and walk to our homes. That was for a whole day. So if we had to have an emergency vehicle, any type, what would happen? So when people design cul-de-sacs, they make me really nervous.
Yeah, that's the same thing with us, but that's why we make sure we have the right distances and the widths. Yeah, during construction phases, that's just what it is. That's what we have to deal with in the world we live in. But for the most part, that's why we got the width, so trucks can pass each other, we can turn around and get things back out.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Selly or Siva?
Mr. Chairman, I think I'm going to chime in here a little bit and kind of give you a little perspective on how the review of these type of things go. Mrs. Dukart just made a good comment. I think that's what we look at is we have what's called a site plan review now, where all of these come in. Used to be what happened is the developer walked around with a checklist and talked to everybody separately, and we weren't together in a room, and then things like this would come up, and Public Works would say, hey, I hadn't heard that, and Public Safety would say, hey, I hadn't heard that. So we bring everybody together. And I'm going to go back to when we first looked at this. We were going from commercial on West Ridge to residential backing up on West Ridge, and that creates some different thoughts and challenges, I think. We as a staff managed to work through most of those. We're like, okay, if it does go to residential, we're fine. That could be okay. The one cul-de-sac, you really can't use that property if you don't have that cul-de-sac. The developers did address some of our concerns about the width of that and how the sidewalks would go in, and I think that would happen. And one of the reasons why we look at this is watch a garbage truck go into a cul-de-sac. Now every other pickup day try and pick up 2 trash cans. I don't know how your driveway is. My driveway is quite large, and my neighbors aren't. So I can space my cans out to where they're accessible, but my neighbor can't. We're not on a cul-de-sac. So those are the kind of things that a developer might not think about, but operationally we do. So that was the thing is when we talk about limiting cul-de-sacs or even the bulbs of a cul-de-sac. So when we look at this, we're taking West Ridge really from a commercial on the north side to residential, but we're not at all tying it together. So why do 47th and then the next phase 48th and 49th not tie into West Ridge? Now that takes care of a lot of issues with the fire department. That takes care of a lot of issues operationally, but there's something we're missing here. You heard that things are different from the boom. And in the boom, things happened quickly. The city couldn't keep up with them. We kind of let the developers develop, and we went on. And now, almost on a daily basis, somebody in the city hears from a resident who is not pleased with living in how we allowed this to be done. And so we saw all sorts of red flags that would lead to that. So one of the things that and we've had some good discussions. Initially, we wanted to bring this to you as a work session to have this discussion that we're essentially having now. The developers requested that we bring it as an action item. And I think we're still going to get the same result. And it's a positive result that we're working through it. But I think we as a city have to say, if this is going to be residential, if everything along Westridge is going to be residential, then 47th, 48th, and 49th have to connect. Because what we do is, if we say Westridge doesn't have to be built now, we're kind of saying it never has to be built. And I don't think that's what we want to put out there. If you talk to anybody in that neighborhood, you can see north of 12th Street, there's existing houses. The wind always blows here in North Dakota, and it snows at least a little bit. We would have snow plows go out to that and open them up one day, and the next day people are screaming at us saying, we can't get out of our houses. When are you ever going to plow this? The wind just blows out there, and accessibility is a problem now. What if we triple or double the amount of houses, which is what this would do through phasing? So we're supportive of the residential change. We're a little concerned about the size of the lots, but we are seeing those go. We do think it makes it a little bit more affordable. But we think trading off the streets to make this affordable is a real issue that will create issues for the city later. When the developer's done, when the contractor's done, we own all of the issues that we've created. And we think if we make this a residential neighborhood and not expand it as far as the access, we would have some issues. Now, since the initial meeting we had, we met with the developers again and talked about perhaps what the design of Westridge could look like, and created some concessions that will make that a little bit better. It doesn't need to be a boulevard like it is now, and medians. So we think there's been some agreements since then, or some understandings that help. So that's really what the big deal was, is that there's just some overall issues that we have some problems with.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Gao. Appreciate that. Any questions for Mr. Gao? Okay, if not.
I just wanted to give you a little bit more insight, and you did have an email from Mr. Selly about the fire turnarounds. So we have in the current plans the temporary turnaround at the end. So when Ms. Dukart talks about the cul-de-sacs, the cul-de-sac they were concerned with was at the end of what is the loop road. It's not the cul-de-sac that goes up in that's too short. That's not the concern that he had. His concern was, and what Chief Syvak said was that at that, once we get to the next phase, we'll exceed where we need 2 access points. So, but for the first part of that, we have the temporary turnaround. It's on the current plans that are in the city. So that addressed, and we believe we've met his need there. And then what we talked about was that second access point. And I had this, and I don't know if is this the map you have?
That's not. Nope.
It's not. Okay. It was in the application.
Okay.
But in general, the red is what we're planning now. The green would be the next phase, which would be 48th Avenue. And so as our road would continue and hit to 48th, what we agreed to is we would develop all the green between Westridge Drive and 12th, as well as 12th and 14th. And at that point in time, we would have 2 access points. So we'd have to come back to you to get that plat approved in the future. And at that point, you would have a say in saying, okay, we have our 2 access points. And so, again, we have the email in your packet that Mr. Selly wrote that said, okay, he's good with that. So we have addressed his concerns or his comments, and that's how we did it. Okay. As far as Westridge Drive, Mr. Gott did, we did meet. We needed to extend that street, extend Westridge Drive just about 120 feet to the west to for whatever reason, when Westridge Drive was built, we stopped at the end of Menards, and that really wasn't the end of Westridge First. And so we need to extend that to make the lot just to the west of Tractor Supply, which is not part of this plat. We needed to extend that, to put that in play. So we have come up with a good section for Westridge Drive to put that in play. And of course, if it would move forward down to what is platted as 50th, that's where the connection point has always been on the master street plan, is the connection be 50th. That would be the section we would be putting it in. And in our development agreement, if you will look through that, the goal would be we would put that in when we have the big parcel, you know, when there would be a demand for the bigger parcel to the south to help share the burden of that cost, because it is a greater cost. It's not a typical residential street. It is a little concession, but it is still a very expensive street to build for when we're not looking for the access off of Westridge Drive. So, you know, in thinking through Westridge Drive, also access control. Yeah, if it is residential all to the north, there is a large commercial to the south potential. So whether we use medians or not, I don't know that putting every street straight through is the right answer either. So I guess those are some things we could work out, but we wanted to put our case forward and say, hey, this is why we did what we did and why we think it's important to move this forward.
Okay. We appreciate that. Okay, well, it sounds like there's obviously been a lot of discussion between city administrator, the engineering department, and the applicant. Anything that's really changed since the information went out with what you've heard today?
Chairman Bollinger, I don't think so. I did have one other question for Mr. Eastham, and that was, you know, I think having the final stormwater report and lowering the densities from what it was, commercial or R3 to R1, R2, will help. Whichever way that water flows is going to help, just because we won't have as much runoff. Jeremy, you remember this too. There was much discussion on sewer and which way it can flow, which way it needs to flow, and not cutting off development to the north as far as capacity of sewer. We all know that development to the north of 15th Street is at this time really non-existent, but there will be a time in the future. And we went through, you know, dozens of meetings, months and months, to define who would have what sewer and where the line would be through this area, Westridge First and Second, of what could fall off to the drainage and the infrastructure that's in place today, and what would need to fall off to the south to a lift station. And I think that's the comment that was made. So that part still concerns me. I think A2S at the time, when Mr. Hall was working there, received a letter from me, basically a will serve letter, and it carved out lots and blocks. I'm sure you have it in your file. Carved out lots and blocks with the understanding that the lift station wasn't going to be built, you know, in the near future. The lots and blocks that could and would be served by the city of Dickinson. I think it's worth everyone's time to take that letter and overlay it onto what we're proposing here, making sure that that still works. And if we're trying to get more lots and blocks into that existing sewer system, let's make sure that everyone's comfortable with that, because, you know, again, it's changing some zoning, but it's also changing the flow patterns that we had all agreed upon after, like I said, more discussion than I ever wanted to have about one subdivision sewer. Came to an agreement, and now we're changing things a little bit, so I think that's really worth revisiting again.
Yes, I would agree. The only difference in what we've done with AE2S, that they're our consultant on this. Here again is kind of like with the stormwater. When you're building apartments, In this case, all of the lots that would be on the north half of this proposal would have been apartments. And so we'd be looking at, what are those, 36-plex. So one lot would have been a 36-plex, and there would have been 1, 2, 3, 4 of those. And within all of the phases that would be south here. So by changing that use, those are the results that we're saying, okay, we're putting in single family. Yeah, there's more lots, but actually there's less units as a whole. And so they have verified that moving the sewer into the mains that exist in 12 work from a capacity standpoint. And by doing that, that's, again, goes back to the whole point. We're actually using infrastructure in place that can handle it without needing the lift station. Now, as far as the lift station goes, we've had some comments. We do need to go back and verify some things, but within the 15th Street DA, within the Westridge 2nd DA, we came to an understanding of the capacity, and at that time, it has been the plan that the lift station would lift the sewer back up and dump it into Westridge Drive manhole. So again, I think we need to have that discussion to make sure that you're comfortable with it. I believe we've provided the plans that say the infrastructure in place will handle what we're proposing. And I believe once we get through, when you're able to do the review, you will see that within the 15th Street and Westridge DA, that what we're asking for meets. We've done it. I guess I'm not sure. I know you haven't had a chance to, but
We'll verify.
Yeah, I think we'd like to have that verified. So, I don't know. Maybe I'm remiss to say this, but our goal, I mean, like we started this in May, and we're here right now, almost the end of the construction season. We have a builder ready to go on some of these lots. Unfortunately, we can't even get a building permit until we have curb and gutter in the ground. We do have some lots platted along 12th that have curb and gutter street right in front of them. So if we could get this plat through, he could start building some of his product there. So again, the history on this thing, as we started it back in May, we actually started it with thought of going preliminary plat and following the process in due order, but some of these issues came up. It did not make your July meeting, so that's when we requested Mr. Hadley, can we do both at the same time to try to get this thing moving through? And we did, and again, issues were brought up and just not solved. It's not that we didn't try, we just couldn't get there. So I think the big hang-up will be Westridge Drive, and we just would like to know where everybody stands.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Easom. And we can certainly appreciate your time and concerns. Any other questions from the commissioners for either Mr. Kubas, Mr. Hadley, or the applicant, Mr. Gah?
The cul-de-sac seemed to be a little bit of an issue on the length of that, Mr. Kubas. He indicated usually the issue is too long and not too short. What is the, I don't understand why there's a guideline of 250 feet. What is the purpose for that?
That's a good question. Our code, and Mr. Eason was right, it's 230 feet, which they're very close to. I think it's just a matter of saying this is pain for snow removal. If it's that short, can we just eliminate it altogether? And you can see, you could eliminate this and you'd end up with 15,000 square foot lots, which is the goal of the subdivision. So I think it would be, or should be, a formal acknowledgement by the board saying, hey, if we're okay with this, we do have short ones. If you go up to Carroll Street, east of 10, there's some real short ones that are probably 1 block long, the throat or the neck of those cul-de-sacs. I guess Public Works might have more comment on the difficulties they might have with snow removal, but I think it's just more of a, boy, it's so short, could we have just got rid of this cul-de-sac? Then you see it in the layout. and you're confined to a certain space, it's more difficult than it seems. Our next item is going to be Chapter 34 review, and that can certainly be a comment. The max length is a lot more important than the min length. 750 feet, I think, is our max. You push snow for 750 feet, and you get to the end of the cul-de-sac, you got a lot of snow, so. I guess, it's a comment, it's a code. I think we should make if we decide to approve this, we should make, a formal waiver of that minimum. And maybe change that minimum moving forward in Chapter 34.
Okay. Any other questions?
And at one time, was that an option to make that a through street there, or did somebody bring that up? There's no into the apartments over there. There's no way to make that.
A grade issue.
Right. Okay. So they bring that.
So in the second phase of this, then does 11th Street turn and head north up 48th?
Correct.
That's, that
48th,
would be the solution?
yeah, 48th would then have another bulb at the end, like 47th.
Okay.
And that's why we propose that if you run 47th and 48th through, then you can have the fronts of the lots to 47th or 48th, and no backyards backing up to West Ridge, which we have allowed in some places. I think you'll remember a couple of meetings ago, we dealt with one on Museum Drive that we were righting some wrongs, and it wasn't easy or fun because the property owners, have some issues. So that's one of the reasons why we think that West Ridge is so important to this development.
Okay. Any other questions, comments?
Chairman Bollinger.
Mr. Quist.
A while back, we had an individual come, Steve Sletner, and gave a presentation on potential update to the comp plan and just some real minor road design things that they looked at as being inefficient to the city. And I'm just, it's more of a question for the applicant and some thought from the board. But so where we have, I always call them a knuckle, on 47th Avenue West on the south end, I think I'm looking at, right? On the south end, is there any reason we need to bulb that back, creating more street, probably another tricky area for snow removal to get nice up against the curb? Couldn't we extend those right-of-ways straight, less street to build, a little less curb to build? The lots get a little bit bigger, but at the end of the day, I don't know that we need that pavement as the city, and I don't know that the developer wants to put that little extra pavement in. Would require a little bit longer driveway for the homeowner, but.
I believe the issue will come with the lot frontage. The bulb actually gives us a chance to get a little extra lot frontage to meet the minimums. So to put those two lots in play, having 50 foot of frontage with what Mr. Quiz is saying is an angle, we lose precious feet, I guess, in getting that lot frontage. So that's the purpose of the bulb.
You're talking lots 2 and 3?
1 and 2?
1 and 2 on the plat.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah.
What do you look
That make,
but if you look on the West Ridge third edition, there's
that makes sense.
1 and 2.
Where's this one from?
Oh, okay.
If you're on here, it's 1 and 2. They're
Yeah,
numbered
just,
different.
there has been some different drawings circulated that might
I think
make
we'll look
it
at the same
confusing.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that is the purpose, if we could, if it would work and we could get that frontage, we would, but you can see with that, even with the length of those curves, we're 54 feet. So we're close, and That's my guess is why we had to do that. Now, whether we can make it happen, we could look at it.
Oh, the frontages in the cul-de-sacs are quite a bit smaller than in that little bulb out, you know. And maybe it's a variance, or again, something we look at, maybe we separate out on a outside corner or in a cul-de-sac, maybe we have a different minimum frontage, understanding that those get squeezed a little bit as the lot lines narrow up towards the front. But it was just something that was brought to all of our attention when we had that transportation planner meet with this board. Gosh, it must have been 8 months ago, but I thought the idea had some validity to it at the time. And
some of the, you know, and this may be unprecedented to even ask, but we know we have to go in front of City Commission next as well. It seems like, in general, we're making some progress here, and I think we can get to the end on many of the issues. Again, from a timing standpoint, we'd really love to see this move forward, even under some conditions. And so, as we get to the end, rather than just deny it, before you do that, we'd sure ask that we have some discussion as to some other options that possibly could move this forward with a condition, whatever the case is, to move to the next level. And if by chance some of these minor changes happened, that they would be done before City Commission approval anyway. Otherwise, we lose. Well, we're not even sure if we ask for continuance, then we can be back here next month.
Right.
If you deny, I think Mr. Hadley said we've already missed a chance to be back next month. So just, Mr. Hadley can probably better inform you. I'm not here to do that, but I just, before you just deny, we would ask that we talk about that.
Okay, I think I mean, there's certainly a possibility if we did that. What does that mean? We'd probably be looking at, whatever the engineering department would recommend as conditions, but did you want to speak to the process?
Sure, Mr. Chairman. We surely could, an option is to table this item, request that the applicant work with specifically, really engineering at this point to resolve some of these issues. By tabling it, it would automatically be on the next agenda, which would be in September. That would allow us to continue this dialogue, continue this. From our standpoint, from staff standpoint, we would need to have that wrapped up so we could get the information to you probably a week and a half before the meeting, because we typically give you the information a week before the meeting. I would need a few days to do an amendment to the review itself, summarize whatever the conclusions came from, and then come up with a new list of conditions that would go with this, and then a recommended list of conditions that would be incorporated in the development agreement as well. So it surely can be done if you'd like to facilitate that. I mean, like I said at the beginning, we would like to facilitate this, but there was no way to really just facilitate it and move it forward.
Mr. Chairman, we can still approve the zoning change, though, right?
That's correct, yes, that's correct. And because actually the timing of the zone change is probably more critical, just to make this all move together. It isn't critical for building homes because they can build a home on an R3 lot if they do the R3 lot. So, I mean, that part of it isn't, but for the rest of the project that was zoned community commercial, they couldn't obtain a building permit for a home on that. So it is critical for those lots, but they would be done still about the same time.
What you're saying is denial would automatically push it into October, best case scenario.
Well, yeah, as they stated, my deadlines are always the first Friday of the month for the next month's meeting. So, we're close to that time frame. I would say also, if the commission was going to entertain a table, the one thing we want to do, I want to throw it on the table, is we're going to need a surety of 130% for all the public infrastructure that's planned to be developed. And, you know, that should be outlined, one in the DA, but it would be great if we had those estimates at the time that this came back. If you choose to table it, it would be great if we had those estimates and Engineer Kubis could agree to the amount, and then our city attorney would agree with the format of the surety, just so that would be a clean transition to move forward, because the time frame of that would be rather close.
Okay. So. Thank you. All right, any other questions from commissioners? Mr. Justin? Okay, yep. Okay, this time we'll open it up to the public for a public hearing. Anybody here to speak on behalf or for or against the project? Doesn't look like it. Now I'll open up to questions from commissioners. Right, not hearing anything. With that, I'm going to go back to you one more time, Mr. Kubis. These, you know, with what you've heard today, does it sound like these are things that we can work through in relatively short order in order to get resolution by the September meeting? I mean, are these workable issues?
Well, they're issues able to be worked on. I think, you know, certainly looking at that sanitary sewer is going to be a big one.
Yep.
Storm, you know, I just have kind of a gut feeling. I think the storm will work out. Obviously, Mr. Easton thinks they'll both work based on, you know, the same concept that there's less density in this proposal. But again, we need to go through that and verify. You know, the USPS thing, it's really a matter of just finding the person. I think that's always a struggle for everyone that needs to put mailbox anywhere. Gotta look at my list again. If the board is okay, if this commission is okay with the cul-de-sac as it is, I think personally, I think, you know, we can look at the length they have and say that's fine, as long as we go through with the fire department and make sure that that turning radius, and I think you said you get that by pulling the sidewalk up to the curb.
Yeah,
and then you can.
The 96 feet is in the design, so the drivable width is in.
Okay, thank you. Now, out of respect to what Mr. Goss said, I mean, I couldn't agree more that, you know, we want to make sure that we cross all our T's and dot all our I's, because we all were around when the boom was happening and things were happening rather quickly, and now we're, in some cases, we're paying for it. So I think we all have probably 99% of the same goal here. We want, you know, something to proceed. We just want to do it the right way. So, all right, with that, maybe it's kind of a big item. One more time, I'll ask if there's any other comments or questions from commissioners.
I guess I would just make one comment regarding the roads going through 47th and 48th. It sounds like this has been in place since May, which is prior to my time, and I think if that was something that we wanted or going to require, that should have been held out early on, because that probably would have, I'm guessing, would have switched their approach to this right away. So I'm making the assumption that we are good with 47th coming around, connecting to 48th and heading back north.
Anything else? Okay, after consideration, is there a motion on the zone change and/or the final plat?
We do the first motion, right? I move the City of Dickinson Planning and Zoning Commission recommend approval of REZ-003-19 rezoned to R2 as depicted in attachment A, and meeting all the requirements of the Dickinson Municipal Code, and also being in the interest of public health, safety, and welfare. With, do I have to add the recommendation?
For the zoning, do you have any, I don't think there's anything, any recommendations or conditions?
No, there's, you can't put conditions on the zone.
Okay. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Karski. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Now we'll act on the plat, final plat. Okay, so our options would be to approve with conditions, to deny pending further discussion, or to table and move this forward to the September meeting.
I move the City of the Dickinson Planning and Zoning Commission recommend tabling of FLP 00619 West Ridge 3rd Subdivision Preliminary Final Plat as being not ready for final consideration by the Planning Commission and not yet in conformance with the Dickinson Comprehensive Plan and meeting all the requirements of the Dickinson Municipal Code and not yet being in the best interest of the public health, safety, and welfare. This item is being tabled to the next regularly scheduled Planning Commission meeting on September 18th of 2019.
Second.
Give it a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay. Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. So we have moved part of it forward, and hopefully we can get together with engineering and you folks and move this project forward and come to some resolutions. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. All right. Last item on the agenda was tabled from last meeting, the amendment to Chapter 34, and I believe there was a summary included today. And Mr. Josephson?
Yes.
Yours?
Yes. Good morning, Commissioner Steve Josephson. And yeah, this was heard last month. This was heard last month, and actually you will need to reopen public hearing on this from what I remember last month. Either way, okay. Yep. But the major concern of discussion at last month's meeting had to do with the section about improvements. The language you have before you is based upon a discussion that both the Planning Director Hadley and I believe Engineer Kubis had with, there were a couple representatives from the engineering community who were involved in this. And based upon that discussion, this is a proposed language. The first part of it would require that prior to construction of subdivision infrastructure, that the city, the developer, and contractor enter into an agreement, agreement for all public improvements that would actually list specific dates of completion for improvements and an expiration date. One of the things that could be done if this was a development that didn't really require something like this, like a smaller development or something that had been previously platted, and that that those kinds of subdivisions could be exempted from something, from this agreement. And then also the next part talked about determining the surety, the amount of what would be used to determine the surety, and those would be based upon the factors of the cost of construction of all public infrastructure, the cost of warranty work, and then anticipated contingency fund. Prior to construction of public instruction, the developer would actually obtain what would be a development permit from the city, and the cost of that permit would cover fees for plan reviews, inspections, and administrative costs to the cities. And the cost of this development fee would be reflected in the city's fee schedule. And then if you go down to F, there'd always been this, the way it was written, it was in the past was you finish all the improvements and then that the surety is released. This would allow for in an agreement that if certain improvements were completed, a portion of the surety could be released. Could be released to the developer. That would be based upon acceptance by the city engineer. So this was the one chapter that I think was discussed in great detail, looking for some clarity as to what the city's role would be and what the developer's role would be, and how long a surety would be held, and specifics about when that would be released and the kind of work that would be done. So this is here for your consideration. Otherwise, nothing else in the proposed Chapter 34 amendments has changed. And you may want to direct your questions to Planning Director Hadley and City Engineer Kubis.
Okay.
This is what came out of discussions since the last Planning and Zoning Commission meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Justin. Before I turn it over, open it up to the public. Any comments in favor or supportive or against? Anybody from the public? All right, hearing none. Mr. Hadley, do you have comments on this? And it's unfortunate that Mr. Frederick couldn't be here, and I guess Mr. Decker, because I think they both had some opinions on this at the last meeting, and I'm assuming it looks like this addresses most of their
Mr.
concerns.
Chairman, yes, we have tried to address as best we can what the concerns were. I think we're trying to balance where we were. We had surety required in the past. We didn't always collect it. Now, as you hear, even through this process, we're being a little more hard-nosed, if you want to look at it that way, and requiring the 130% surety that's already required in our ordinance. This just supports that, but what it also does is provides the establishment of a development review permit for public infrastructure for us to be able to inspect as it goes in, because we all can point to areas that probably would have benefited us as not only the city and taxpayers and whatnot, but also if there's additional plan review or some contingency, and also administrative costs. I mean, there are costs to the city. This whole process talks about us releasing funds. That means cutting checks. That means, the whole process of us being in the middle of development as it occurs. The general taxpayer probably doesn't want to pay for whether it be West Ridge or whether it be Sundance Cove or whether it be Diamond Acres. The general taxpayer probably doesn't want their tax money paying for that to be processed and go through the process. So that's kind of the idea behind this. I think that it captures what the concerns were. And Engineer Kubis, I don't know if you have anything else you want to add to it. I think we do have buy-in from the local engineering firms. Our contract engineer that has been heavily involved in this. We had some outside input from just an engineer that works on a lot of projects in our community. They both think that this is a workable solution to an improvement from where we've been. So.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I wish Mr. Nygaard would have stayed for this conversation, because we had actually talked about this on part of their Westridge second work, and I think he was agreeable in general to this proposal. So, like Mr. Hadley said, we would stay at the 130% financial security, whatever that financial security is, and that really would cover 100% of the construction costs, some contingency, which we're estimating at 10%, and warranty, which we would estimate at 20%. I think the thought being, once the project's done and accepted, we enter into that 1-year warranty period, that security could be, 100% of that security could be released, 20% would be retained for the warranty period. We maybe don't have all those details worked out in this code, but it might just be a policy statement that we have the commission adopt by resolution as well. So again, the security that we have, or we want to require, would cover the construction costs, the construction, the warranty, and the contingency. Then there would be a fee for construction inspection. And that fee might also include some administrative time on the city's ends, because we do have some back and forth between the developer and the contractor and the city. This implies, and maybe we need to look at the wording, that there is a three-way agreement between the city, the contractor, and the developer. And that's a similar situation to what Bismarck does right now. I think where that really helps is we've had a lot of discussions with developers saying, post a bond with us. And a bond is just really a form of insurance that's specific to the construction industry. Developers say, we're not constructors, we're not contractors. We have a difficult time getting bonding. We can provide insurance, but we don't do bonding. This way, we can get the contractor to provide a bond, which they do on almost every project. Every project for a municipality, they provide a bond. The gap we had before was they said, well, we don't have an agreement with the city, so we can provide a bond that would be in the name of the developer who they have an agreement with. This three-way agreement kind of closes the loop. The contractor might ultimately be the one providing the bond because that's what he can do. It would be in the name of the city, so we're protected. If the work for whatever reason fell apart, we'll call on that bond, we'll finish up the water, the sewer, the streets. The owner in this situation that's laid out here before you, the owner would still have their engineer design the plans, reviewed by the city. The owner would bid out their work. The city would have no public dollars in the construction of this, so we wouldn't have to go through the public bidding process necessarily. We just want to be hands-on during construction with the inspection in the field.
Okay.
I don't think it's a huge departure from what we're doing. The big addition is adding that three-way agreement.
And the actual separate permit for the inspection, you know, is, and that'll be outlined. I mean, obviously, it's just mentioned in here, but as Craig said, it would be outlined, and then a fee would be established by the city commission through their regular fee schedule. We really don't want to put that in here because that could change. It changes annually. So I think the one thing that everybody does need to realize, it may not be popular with all the contractors if you can't get bonded. So, you know, I guess the question would be, if Craig was doing a public works project and we had some bids from people that couldn't get a bond, I'm going to say the city commission probably wouldn't pick them to do our work. It would also exclude them from doing the work for someone private, putting our same infrastructure in as well. So that is the one. Is everybody clear on that, or what I'm trying to say there? I don't know if I did a very good job, but if you're not if you're not bondable, you probably wouldn't be involved in this process, which means you wouldn't be building that public infrastructure for that developer or the city. So, you know, being able to obtain a bond is, I think, important for all of us because, you know, not only is the inspection important, like Craig said, but you know, obviously the quality of work and the standing behind it comes with being able to be bonded as well. So just wanted to add that. I believe we've addressed all of the concerns that were brought up. You know, obviously your recommendation on this will go to the city commission.
Does it have to go through us twice or just the once?
No, just one time. Yep.
And then city commission in
2 readings.
September?
There'll be 2 readings there.
2 meetings for the city commission.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right. Any questions? Anything, Mr. Goff, from you? You have any comments? Okay. Any questions from commissioners? Comments from commissioners? I know we had a lot of discussion last meeting, so we've probably aired all of our grievances. So anything else we want to bring up before you need action on this?
If the board would like to, we surely would like to, for next construction season, I'd like to have this completely done and not talk about it again for a little while. if
Understood.
possible.
Understood.
I'm sure you would too.
Well, with that, I would entertain a motion to address or to approve or deny the requested improvements or requested modifications as presented.
Mr. Chairman, we don't need any kind of a public hearing on this or anything?
You did have a public hearing last time. We continued that.
And we just continued it and.
Continued that by notice, and given the audience, I think that we did a good job.
Chairman Bollinger, all you need to do at this point is recommend approval or denial of the amendments to Chapter 34.
Okay.
At this point, this section is included as part of it.
Okay. And the rest we've already seen, and there was no issues.
The rest you've already seen. There were no changes to the rest of it.
Okay, so all we're looking at is for approval or denial of the amendments to Section 34.
Yes, sir.
Correct. Yep.
I'll make a motion to approve the amendment.
Okay. Ms. Dukart.
Chapter 34.
Ms. Dukart recommends approval of the amendments to Section 34.
I'll second that.
Okay. A motion and a second. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? All right, hearing none. All in favor of recommending approval, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Anything else to come before Planning and Zoning Commission?
Not at this time.
All right.
Chairman.
Hearing nothing, we stand adjourned. Thank you.